Hello, and welcome to another episode of Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and today we're talking with Tim Ives, the DP of the miniseries Halston, now on Netflix, as well as, Stranger Things. Did a couple episodes on House of Cards, Trem, a bunch of really good stuff out of Tim. I'm sure you've seen it. Really love this conversation. Probably one of my favorites. Every episode I end up saying this one's one of my favorites. I feel like things just keep getting better and better. But we have a really great conversation about photographers and photographic reference. I actually picked up a couple of the books that he recommended. Some of them are incredibly expensive, but a lot of them are reasonable. I'm always trying to build up my collection. So I'm going to let you get right to it. Here's my conversation with Tim Ives, ASC. So I like to start every conversation with just what got you into cinematography. Were you always into filmmaking or photography? Did you go to school for it?
I didn't go to school for photography, although I did take some cinema classes and film appreciation classes. Then I always had a still camera in my hand, or I did when I was younger, and then I sort of lapsed with it, and then came back to it and started taking it more seriously when I realized that this is something that speaks to me and I enjoy doing. Just to understand film at that point. I mean, still cameras, you can expose at a 50th of a second. It's essentially the same thing as a motion picture camera, as you know. But I think I always was a visual person, even as a kid. Whether it was like making up little stories with animals in the woods, because I lived up in Vermont, and trying to visualize those with my still camera, make a little story. I guess it wound up looking like storyboards probably, but unbeknownst to me. But photography's been with me for a while. My dad was a good photographer as well, so maybe I could put something from him there.
I saw a interview that you had done where you were saying, or I guess it was with lights, with Leica lights, and you were saying that you had, when you first got your your good money check, you bought an M6.
Yeah, I got it right here. It's so
Still
good.
Have it.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was the first thing I bought. 3 lenses, and that thing has sat on the shelf for a while because of a digital. But I'm in Charlotte now on a film, and I brought that down with me here too. And I have a Q2 now also, which is just maybe the best camera I own by Leica. But that was one of those things. Both were purchased towards the end of the financial year on approval from my wife. I had to call her. I'm like, how much money do we want to spend for tax reasons? And, it's like I used to say, it's like the sign, in Bugs Bunny, when you see the guy holding the sign and he just zips out and then the sign just drops. It was like, that was me going to Sammy's camera,
Yeah. I'm a big fan. I've always, for film, I've always shot on a Nikon F2 and a RZ67, but I'm really enjoying those Fujifilm digital cameras. They're very tactily very enjoyable, but the look out of them is fantastic.
Yeah, they're really nice too. I mean, I decided to stick with Leica. I had a Fuji, and one of my daughters is a really great photographer, and she sort of was like, I lent it to her, and I don't think I ever got it back. But I also I'm a Nikon person. With the D850, and I just bought some vintage Nikon lenses, manual focus on eBay that I'm just super excited about. The 105 especially is just this 1980 105 is beautiful.
I have that lens. I have a full Nikkor set.
Wow. I mean, they're stunning, and I don't even have an 80 millimeter anymore, or 85, whatever the millimeter is, that portrait lens that everyone goes to. It's that 105 is I'm just so excited about it.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of like personal filming? Because for me, my job is sort of also the personal work. So I'll chuck on those Nikkors onto my C500 when shooting a lot, even though they're stills lenses, but I'm usually pulling my own focus, so it's not as big of an issue.
I don't, outside of filmmaking, I don't really use any of these cameras for recording videos unless it's like, just kids running around and that sort of stuff. And my
Sure.
still photography is probably mostly landscapes. I still haven't quite mastered that being able to go up to somebody cold and saying, "Hey, can I take your picture?" It's like I just feel like it's such an invasion, and I need to get past it because I have so many friends that are amazing photographers, and they're like, "It's no problem. Most people want to do it. If they don't, they'll just tell you." But still, I was going to take the online Annie Leibovitz class because I feel like she's much more. I feel very akin to her as far as like lighting and working from an emotional
Standpoint.
standpoint versus technical because I like to think of it like in terms of the story you're trying to tell, and when I start getting too technical about it, it just takes away from that.
I took that master class, and you're right, it is very there's almost no technical information.
That's
She
what I
mostly,
love. Yeah,
yeah.
was it good? Did you like it?
Yeah, at the time I was trying to get better at portrait photography,
Yeah,
and so I was looking for more technical information. But I think once, you might agree with this. Once you get past a certain level of technical knowledge and it's in the back of your head, any more is just reinforcing what you already know. There's not like, at a certain point, there's no new information under the sun in that regard, and you need that. Like, how did you shoot a portrait session with the Queen? What?
yeah.
How did you work with her?
It's really that's the biggest thing is like how do you get comfortable with somebody. A very good friend of mine, Jocelyn Lee, is a wonderful portrait photographer, and she does landscapes too. And she, when she was living in Brooklyn, I once in a while go over and help her out just with like I'd drag a light over just because she was more of available light and she needed a little bit of fill, so I'd bring a Kino over or something and help her. But she, I learned something from her is that she, spends a lot of time with the subject without a camera before before you bring a camera into it. So to gain that trust and to let people know that you're not just there to tell a story, not just like take a quick snap for your own career's work. Yeah, she and also Will de Baron, who's my B camera operator. She's also an incredible photographer and does the same thing.
Yeah, there's definitely yeah, I haven't figured out street photography either. It does feel very that old adage of like, oh, it steals your soul or something, but it can feel painful to just walk
Well,
up to someone and be like, gimme.
well, you also, I mean, sometimes you're walking down a street and then all of a sudden the light is amazing and it's hitting something or somebody and they look amazing. And in New York, you find, people will walk out in a non-pandemic world, they walk out to be seen. A lot of people do. And
Sure.
so the truth is they'll probably be, if they are wearing something that's funky or doing something that's just different, then they probably want a little attention. But I'll let you know. I'd like to get better at it, and I don't mind. I don't mind the journey to figure it out either. It's been a long journey so far. I definitely haven't mastered it, but I guess you
Sure.
don't really want to master anything because then what is there to learn?
No, oh man, that's the big thing too. Is like I recently, I don't know if you feel the same way. I started to love failing. I really enjoy it because not in the sense of like, oh, I've ruined my career, but like when you blow it and you learn something and you go, oh, the world just opened for me. There's a whole new series of things that I can learn that I didn't know. You don't know until you don't know or do know.
That's a really incredible thing to point out, I think, and for people that are starting out, and even just kids, trying to get through high school. It's like failing is not really failure unless you don't take anything away from it, unless you don't learn from it. I think that most cinematographers, myself, and I mean, I would imagine everyone has a story where they screwed up things, and I mean that's how we get better at what we do is by something coming out a little differently than we thought, or having to confront a situation, that puts you at a disadvantage, and still be able to get through it. Yeah, failure. The term doesn't really mean what most people use it for. Yeah, it's a great learning experience.
I think the other problem with the failure is it's too close to final.
Yeah.
It's not the end. Hopefully you're failing at when you try something, not just like, I think if
Oh,
you
yeah.
apply the same knowledge you've applied for 15 jobs and then you blow it, it's like, well, that probably wasn't the same
No,
thing. But if you're like, I'm going to
if you
try a new
blow it,
lighting
if you blow the
technique.
same thing twice, especially on a gig that that's not just you filming your kids in the backyard, then maybe you got to figure it out. You might not get that third chance.
Yeah. Did you, when you were coming up, did you have the opportunity to sort of practice your craft sort of at home, or did you always have to find a job to sort of hone that skill?
No, I think I took when I knew that I wanted to be a cinematographer, I knew that I was, moving in that direction. I definitely had my film camera out and kept it in manual mode. And my old, I think it was a Pentax, was it K1000? I think
Yep.
the one that everyone had, on a 50 millimeter lens. And I just walked around and appreciated light and checked out different exposures. I would shoot, at a vegetable market. I'd shoot, with different exposures and see what I liked, and always mark it so I knew what I did there. And that really helped me learn. And it was a relatively affordable way to do it then, even though, developing all that film, on a PA's budget, and was it could it was expensive, but
Sure.
so yeah, I did that. I did still photography helped me a lot just to understand exposure and light appreciation. But everything else, oh yeah, I did have a Bolex too, a 16 millimeter Bolex that I loved, and learned on that, and would buy the 50-foot rolls, and when I had some money, and test that way. Um, so yeah, I think it's a combination of both.
Did you have any photographic influences coming up, or was it largely trying to replicate things you'd seen in the theater?
Yeah, well, I think still photography wise, definitely. I think Eggleston, which many people would say is an influence, was an influence for me. I mean, there are so many. I mean, there's the painters, the Dutch masters, of course. It's the usual crop that you probably hear about. But my wife and I are still avid collectors of photography and photo books. And when I first started, assisting, I was working with Arthur Elgort, who's a fashion photographer, made famous in the 60s. And I, watch him. I work with Philip Dixon also. I worked with Robert Frank. I mean, just Philip Dixon was many times, Arthur was many times, and Robert Frank was once on a Patti Smith video that I'll never forget it as long as I live. But just being in the same in his presence. But Robert
Yeah.
Frank is obviously, and Diane Arbus, and I forget who her contemporary is. I forgot her name. I mean, it was like, Sally Mann was sort of from that Diane Arbus school as well. But yeah, photography will always influence me for sure.
Are there any, I actually just started collecting photo, but like recently, especially during the old, the pandemonium, the panda sanctuary, the pandemic, I bought a huge lot of, back issue American cinematographers off eBay, getting a lot of Criterion DVDs just for those extra, or Blu-rays for the extra
Yeah.
supplemental stuff, and so got a lot of books, but photo books are relatively new to me. Are there any that you suggest picking up?
I have a bunch with me here in Charlotte. If you give me a second, I'll just go and look at them for a
Yeah,
second.
please.
I'll bring some of my favorite over.
Yeah.
Okay, here you go.
Yeah.
Saul Leiter. One of it didn't. He didn't really. He didn't really. He didn't unfortunately live long enough to see his fame. But his use of color and his use of reflections through glass is just absolutely stunning. His work in New York and elsewhere is just to this day still so inspiring. And seeing he did a lot of reflections.
Oh,
He
wow.
work with reflections, really beautiful. This is a must-have. And then we have lots of Egglestons. I got like a bunch of them here. This is somebody that my producer on Stranger Things, Ian Patterson, turned me on to. I didn't know him, Luigi Gieri. I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing it right. Kodachrome, Italian guy. Oops.
Oh, fantastic!
Just beautiful composition. Just beautiful. This is a newer sort of thing. I mean, he has that kind of desaturated Eggleston kind of feel, and he's a photographer who did a lot of seaside portraitures. I can't remember his name right now. I'll remember it. Okay, I got more. Eggleston. One of my favorites right here is Tina Barney. She
Oh, wow.
she did a lot of portraits of her family in the 70s and 80s that to this day I still love. And this book is a main reference for lighting right now on a film I'm shooting. I was trying to find something here that, I mean, her portraiture is pretty remarkable. Her use of color.
Oh my goodness.
Really, really wonderful. And she captures this sort of bougie upper class that's like, that's just remarkable. This is going to keep going on. I'm a big fan of Linda McCartney, Paul's, deceased wife. Her access to rock and roll back then was remarkable, and she was a really good photographer. I got a couple of hers. This is one of my favorite ones of hers. She's wonderful. This is also a must-have. Most cinematographers know him, Philip Lorca de Corsia, who does work that looks like it's natural light and caught, but it's all set up.
Oh wow!
Like hyper real lighting in a natural setting.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is a must-have book. I think I've referenced it maybe on every single job I've ever done.
That's fantastic.
And he did a lot of New York Times work as well. Again, my friend who I mentioned before, Jocelyn Lee, her work is stunning. Portraiture, one of my all-time favorite portrait photographers.
Wow.
It's just natural light. It's just beautiful. She's doing she's a new book out on skin and aging. Of course, Bruce Davidson is great for that in the 70s New York thing. Stephen Shore, you can pick up any book by Stephen Shore. Yeah, And then here is the painter that is probably most I reference on every film. John Register, who's amazing. Larry Sultan is fantastic. He actually did a lot of work on X-rated sets, which is interesting, but not my favorite of his. This one is a lot of that. Yeah, this one is
in Los Angeles.
I think Los Angeles. Yeah,
just that cover. That cover looks very hills.
Yeah, it's a good book. But let me
Oh wow!
Really interesting compositionally. Fred Herzog, Modern Color, really, really great book. And this one's a good reference for something I'm going to shoot this fall. As is John Register, that sort of framing within a frame and color.
Yeah.
Really, really nice.
That's fantastic.
We've got any skin in here too. Really, the most important thing is skin, because, like I was saying, like when you're walking down the street and you find that light that we were just talking about, and you're like, oh my God, I wish I had my camera with me. It's like, it's just amazing. And then I have another Stephen Shore book, but those are the ones that I took with me on this job, on this film I'm working on now. But a lot of them translate, for so many other things. But,
yeah, That's
Yeah.
fantastic. I'll have to pick some. Yeah, I've got Brooklyn, the Rebecca and Alex Webb book. Um, what do we got? Jeff Bridges. I like Jeff Bridges.
Oh
Sort of
yeah.
widescreen. His what's that called? The that widescreen camera that he uses.
It's not a
Uh,
Lomo, is it? Or I don't know
no,
what.
it's a shit. I'd have to.
I gotta like. I gotta get. I don't have anything of his. What a decent human being he is too.
Oh yeah, I've heard. So this is he goes wide.
Excuse me.
Does it say right up front what camera he's using? It's got a couple of his like selects. I don't know if you can, but like that's a fun.
It's hard to see, but I'm gonna look it up after this.
Yeah. Let me see if I can figure out. Oh, there's like a whole intro. But yeah, since he shoots all these wides, he's got these amazing like double wide
Oh wow.
prints that you can.
Oh yeah, look at that.
And just his access, obviously, to sets that he was on. You
Right.
get all these insane behind the scenes things. Oops.
It's so smart of him to keep that camera right next to him. So like when they're lining up a shot on him, he can just take a picture of it. So it's a point of view that none of us ever really get. We're always, so few get that. We're always on the other side.
Super educational. I will say, to your point about not having your camera on you, my favorite setup right now, if I can get the battery grip off, because that kind of defeats the purpose. I was just in South Lake Tahoe, and I was able to get a bunch of great photos because this setup fits in my pocket. It's just the little Fujifilm X-T3 with the 27 pancake.
Oh, beautiful.
So that's, I'm having so much fun because this is a jacket, like poofy jacket. Just chuck that in your pocket and pull it whenever.
That's a fixed lens on there. It doesn't come off, right?
No, it does. It does. The X100 is the fixed lens.
Right.
So
I think my daughter. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the thing I like about this is I'll keep this on for most of the time. And then if I ever get a professional job, I'll use a real lens, but quote unquote. But this little pancake is just such a joy. It's
nice and small too.
Yeah. It's like the size of my palm. The lens cap is almost adding too much bulk to the front.
Yeah, those Fujis are great. I think my daughter has an XT2. Yeah, they're dynamite.
Do you think, is there, when you're looking at composition, especially using those references, where does that reference kind of fall apart when it comes to cinematography? Because there's a lot of photos that are just, I think, Dad Robot. Mr. Robot was maybe a little more adventurous in the compositions. Maybe that might be a little more photographic.
Well, yeah. I think it can fall apart once you start moving the camera. Like in stills, we just take the shot and we're done. We're out. But I do like to move the camera for storytelling purposes. Your frame is just, it's hard. It's mostly going to happen in a portrait shot or a still shot is where you're going to be able to keep that frame and light and all that sort of stuff. So it does fall apart a little bit when you start moving the camera. And we did a lot of that in Halston, a lot of moving the camera. But Mr. Robot, I did the pilot for that. And Todd Campbell did the series, did a beautiful job on the series. That Sam Esmail, the directing producer, and it was his baby. He wanted to see Elliot in that off sort of way, in a way that made it feel like his world was just different than everyone else's. I think Elliot was the character's name. But that was a really cool pilot to work on with him. Super creative, threw everything out the window and just started fresh. That one, its references were really just, I can't even recall any photographic references on that. It's just like we just want to really put him on the edge, literally put him on the edge, and that's what we did.
Yeah, with Stranger Things, you had there's plenty of articles that you were saying you had, T2 and all these 80s films and that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
How do you translate? I'm correct me if I'm wrong. You're a rather technical person, technical knowledge.
It's not as much as others probably, but certainly you have to know the tools.
Yeah. How do you translate I mean, this is the $1 million question, right? How do you translate that cinematic, old school, big air quotes film look into a modern, like, is the red really instrumental in that, or could you do the same thing with Ari? Is it the lighting, because you need harder lights back then than you do now? How do you sort of translate that?
Well, the Red was one of the first cameras that actually shot in 4K, and Netflix prefers all their content in 4K. So I think there was a Panasonic camera at the time too, which is nice. I haven't had an opportunity to film with that one on any on a movie or TV show, but you know, Red had one thing I've always liked about Red, and I said it in lots of interviews as well, and I'll say it again now, is that it does have a unique look that's very different from Arri. It reminds me of that 200 ASA Kodak stock 5293 that
Oh, yeah.
always had like soft. It felt soft and round on the edges, and I feel like the Red had that. But um, I think for Stranger Things, it was really about, we really were dead on with our references, and just appreciating a style of photography that or cinematography that was prevalent in that same time period. So we did bring, usually you try not to bring any technique or technical into it for a period piece, but we tried to do that exactly with the lighting, mostly referenced at least in season one from ET. Like cool light coming through the windows at night, which wouldn't make any sense in most storytelling. But we were a fantasy show, and we wanted people to feel like this thing had been like locked in a closet and someone just found it and here it is. I felt like we had a really good chance of being able to pull it off. So softer lighting, a little more theatrical sometimes with edge lights, and color. Really, just thinking about color. Um, but it also, Stranger Things was just around the advent of LED lighting when that was just starting to come out. So all that was just changing too, and we were able to light a little faster and really, like, change color temperature without having to swap a gel was a big deal.
Yeah.
And still is a huge deal, walking into something and thinking, you wanted it warm, but now you're like, maybe it should be cool, and being able to change it, like, boop, done.
Do you, that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because I am fascinated by how LEDs have changed the look of films. Obviously, modern cinematography has gotten a lot softer, especially, Kino's come out and then everyone's like, oh, big soft lights, let's do it. But LEDs, at first getting very poo-pooed, are now like no one, being able to, the DMX on the iPad. I assume you're on that move.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's a game changer, and you can't go back. You can dial it all in on that in a way that's very efficient, and you can change it up in a split second. I feel like Kino flows. Remember, those were like the first smaller, soft unit, but they still they had their own look that wasn't necessarily natural. LEDs, can do similar things as Kino flows, but so obviously. Kino has, I think, they're joined the LED ranks as well now, but the LED lighting can, besides being able just to reproduce any color in the gamut, and they also then can help with the appearance of moving lights and fireworks and campfires. It's just bananas how much you can do with them and have it look really, really believable, in a almost a pre-programmed sort of way. But we find the right cocktail for. I mean, we did a car shot where we had a line of stairs running down. Had like the pulse like sliding down on the side, so you see the reflections in the chrome on the car window, just looking like it's going like a street light. It's going right past you, and I could change up the speed of the car by alternating how fast those went past us in 15 seconds. It's incredible. It's incredible. The
It's
tools.
fun.
Yeah.
It's funny you said that. Me and a buddy of mine, he runs Stray Angel Films, the rental house in West LA, and they had the original, the AX1 tubes had just come out, and so we were
Yeah.
like, let's do a demo for those. So we did that exact thing. We did a process shot in his little stage with just using a Stereotubes with nothing else, and I guess people saw it because I would be at like Cinegear and someone would be like, "Hey, we've worked together, right?" And I'm like, dude, did you just look up a Stereotubes recently? And they'd be like, that's what it is. But yeah, those tubes are great. We're using them for everything now.
Everything they're wireless, and so you throw them in a cage with some muslin wrapped over them, and you can bring them in really quickly, and all of a sudden you have a light that normally you would have to double diffuse or book and bounce a massive light just to get that quality, and it's right there, and most of the time it's right there. Yeah, they're great.
Are you big on do you use a color meter at all, or are you kind of trusting with what the back of the panel says? Or do you light by
I'm
eye,
trusting
really?
I don't. I lent my color meter to somebody once, and he never gave it back, and I have never bought
Ugh.
another one. But I would like to have one again, I think. But I am sort of trusting. We have noticed that on some of the LEDs, that their version of color temperatures can be off by like 300 degrees. I think that I'm not sure exactly which ones, but we're noticing that 2900 on some feels more like 3400 to my eye.
Yeah,
So I mean, I've done doing this for a while, so you can tell. I know what 2900 looks like. I know what 3600 looks like, 3800. You know, I think within 200 increments, I can be pretty close to picking a light color or naming that color.
yeah.
But yes, some are off a little bit, and I just adjusted.
Totally. Yeah. The reason I ask is I just got the new Seaconic color meter, the C800, and I had never had one before. And so I was going around my house metering every fucking light in the house, going outside, sun, shade, and then it's got, the spectral graph. So you can see like exactly where each light, and exactly what you're saying. A lot of LEDs are 400 off, from their rated.
Yeah. Yeah, those bulbs now that we can control wirelessly too, they seem to be a little cooler than what we're used to for a household bulb. But yeah,
Sure.
we just warm it up.
Yeah. Are you pretty standard with your on camera color temperature? Or are you doing, it's either 56 or 32, or do you really tune in the
Goes all
white?
over the place. That's the beauty of digital, as I change it up all the time. Um, but a lot of interiors recently, I put it 4500, so the windows are a little cool, and the light bulbs are a little warmer. It seems to be nice. Skin tone can be not oversaturated, but I slide it around a lot depending on mixed light. I mean, I use a lot of mixed light sources, and but it's been nice to you use it like a film stock, just adjust that, and that does a nice job.
Yeah. Do you have are you sort of, I guess, allowed in the DI very often, or are you kind of having a conversation with the colorist a lot, or what's that relationship like for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, during production.
Yeah, just in general, because now, I mean, the big thing now is like if you're not, I'm my own colorist because I work in a relatively low budget environment, but I've heard that in the big boy leagues, a lot of times you shoot and then you're like, I hope the colorist and the director pick what I picked, because
I mean,
especially with raw, you can do whatever you want.
it's it's a level of concern a bit, and something that I try to talk about up front on jobs is who the colorist going to be, and I've been very fortunate to be able to work with people that I can pick. Sometimes you can't, sometimes you can, and sometimes it changes. Um, but yeah, most of the people I work with these days are, they're just, we're like-minded. So it just turns out that way. We're interested in the same things, and we're interested in the best thing for the show. So, that hasn't been an issue really too much.
You were talking about how you've worked with people who kind of have the same, you all have the same vision. I noted that you did a couple episodes of House of Cards. And I was wondering what that experience was like, and if you learned, because that's a very. I was just talking in the last podcast about how specific David Fincher is with his look, but I know he wasn't necessarily fully hands-on with that whole series. What had you learned on that show, if anything, and how were you able to apply your own sort of
Well,
impetus?
it was season one, and Igel Brild was the cinematographer. He's the cinematographer of season one. He had some unexpected thing that he had to leave on, and I was asked to come in and finish up the last two. And I obviously did not want to rock the boat. I'd worked with Alan Coulter before, who was the director for the last two episodes. We know each other a long time, and Alan's a very buttoned up director. And I also knew David. I'd met David a couple times in the past, and I know I know him, and I know how he thinks. And I mean, it's just I'm not, I'm not that close with him, but
Right.
I know that to pay attention to every word he uses in a sentence when he's describing something. He expects you to take that direction and not misinterpret it because he says it clearly. So I know that about him, and I think that served me well. He would watch dailies every night on it. I came in and, like I said, didn't want to change it up too much, but I also knew what I felt like. I took a couple chances in some scenes, just knowing that, knowing what I've seen David done in the past, and I just remember it was I can't remember exactly what scene it was, but I know that I took a chance. He was very lovely about all the work that I did on that. But I did learn, David's use of color is sometimes can be very monochromatic, and we weren't. I was told really to refrain from red. There was not a lot of red in wardrobe and red colors anywhere. And maybe I've told this story before, but we had a strip club scene, and we scouted the location. There was going to be some girls dancing, and there was poles, and they had some red lights in there, and just seemed like, well, this is just, am I going to change the color here? So I asked him. He said, no, that's completely fine. That makes total sense. And I said, okay, so but other than that, you're not a big fan of using red. He's like, no, he likes red when you see it in blood, but when you don't see it and then you do see the blood, he said it just makes the impact of the blood much stronger. And he's 100% right about it.
Yeah.
I found that's something I took away from that show that I'll never forget. If you're going to do something that you want to have an impact, like even in Gone Girl, I remember seeing that scene. There's a murder scene in it. That's just, the blood just was like, you didn't see red until then. And then all of a sudden you see it, and it's just unbelievable. Everywhere. Yeah. Yeah, but that was a good experience for me at the time. It was I just was doing a TV show in New York and just starting my narrative career. I was doing commercials up until I was about 40 or so, and had been reading scripts, but then not being somebody who hadn't done major motion pictures, you don't necessarily get those kind of scripts that you'd want to do, and the ones that I did get, they weren't really up my alley. But that wound up changing as the more I stuck by it.
Is there anything that from your commercial work that you have taken on into your theatrical career?
I think my understanding of green screen, believe it or not, I mean, used to be so difficult to do, and now it's not so bad. But I did a lot of Target commercials. I did a lot of music videos back then that I think I take more with me than the commercials, because the videos have. We had nobody over us telling us what to do, so we just did what we wanted to do, and then that winds up translating. People like it, and it's just because we just came up with it. Ideas of shooting and light and composition and film speed and all that sort of stuff. So the music videos still probably stick with me mostly as far as if I'm thinking about lighting in a way that I had to recall things from my before my theatrical career, before my narrative career started. It would be from music videos that I shot for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's actually something I've asked a lot of DPs about, because there doesn't necessarily seem to be a current analog for the sort of glory days of music videos with your Spike Jonze level experimentation.
Yeah.
Uh, do you see sort of a space that people can have that room to fail, as we were saying today? Is it mostly just putting stuff on YouTube and hoping for the best? Because that doesn't seem as for lack of a better term, professional.
Well, I think the room to fail thing, you can't, the level of jobs that we've been talking about, there's not, like, you can't, you just, failure is not acceptable, or being, or oops,
Right.
it's like, sorry, I tried something that didn't really work. It's like, you gotta, I'll bring the experience that I had to a decision on how far to push something, and a lot of times I'll always, if I have some kind of different kind of thought, I'll just vocalize it or verbalize it to my director, saying this might not be the best thing here, but I'm thinking about it. So what do you think? And even if it winds up being something that we don't do, it informs us later on to how we should be thinking regarding that project. And this is what we've been thinking about, and maybe we shoot down that idea now, but maybe something kind of like that, or a smaller, lesser version of that later on in this scene would be really nice to do. Um, but
Well,
yeah,
more specifically, it was I was thinking about how music videos were an entire industry. I guess I'm asking, like, do you see any place that, or any sort of type of work that has supplanted the music video industry? Because that used to be a vehicle for people, and now,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
there's that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be. Look, I often say, I was in the right place at the right time for music videos, because I we did the first few videos I did. We didn't light. We just shot at the right time of day, and I had an appreciation of light. But if I screwed in a light bulb, it was a cause for a major celebration. It was like, wow, look, we got a light. It's Look at this. Look what we're doing. We're doing that. And we were so excited. My collaborator, the start of my filming career, was Frank Sacramento. Um, um,
Great name.
yeah, he's great. He's a surfer photographer. He's he's such a great guy. Lives out in LA with his family, and we appreciated the same thing. And he still shoots with his Beaulieu, and does a lot of little surfing stuff now. Um, but we basically, we're going around LA, shooting some things, just as very experimental, like you said. But it's like we did a spot for a friend of his who owned Jive Clothing, and we got Zendaya Davenport from the Brand New Heavies, she was big at the time, and we had some rappers in it, and all kind of wearing the clothes, and we just went around and shot this sort of fun, like LA vibe, cruising around LA and on rooftops, and my camera had an old spring in it, so when it was, before it ran out, it would also start speeding up, and it was all over the stuff that we shot in the beginning, and it was sort of like a trademark. Tim, how did you do that effect of the film speeding up? I'm like my camera needs to be fixed, but I don't know. I mean, we just had so much fun, but I don't know what that is these days for that.
Yeah, Checo Verisi was saying that that was a time of transition, and he feels that we're kind of in the same thing now, especially with television becoming so. It's not even television anymore. It's what would you call it? Episodic storytelling now
Well,
becoming so huge.
yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, shows like Halston, that we did last fall. Um, I mean, it had that same sort of spirit I'm talking about with Frank Sacramento, that it was a few of us. I mean, it's a big production, Ryan Murphy production, and trucks everywhere, but still the approach is still insular and still between a few people, and you huddle together, and there's four of you making decisions, and it has that. we on that job we had that sort of similar approach. We were all buttoned up. We had every shot planned, shot listed before we started, and we didn't always stick to it. But having that work done allowed us the freedom to sort of create on set and to change things up and to really find the best shot. Dan Menahan was the director of that, and he was such a great eye as well to collaborate with when you work with somebody like that who can really who's really got a photographic sense, and pushes you to just do the unexpected.
Yeah, because I'm glad you dovetailed for me. I was going to ask, because you shot during COVID, did that feel more sort of indie, that production, because it had to be so pared down, or was it kind of more of a hindrance, but you got the job done still, same kind of
It was a
scope?
hindrance. It was a hindrance. No, it was definite hindrance, and something always in the back of my mind was like, this needs, like everything that we work on, we want it to be the best version it could possibly be, but we knew that no one was going to look at this and say, if we didn't bring our A game, or if we weren't able to bring our A game, people were going to be like, oh, well, it was during COVID, so I understand.
Right.
So that was something that I thought of every single day, like got to make sure that we're not cutting corners. And there were a lot of times when you couldn't have as many people around. And we were also nervous, Frank, because we were the guinea pigs for putting all those people in a room together and filming. And, nobody wanted to get sick. Nobody wanted to get anybody else sick. And it wasn't lost on me that our cast was trusting us to keep them healthy. There's a little more pressure. There's always pressure, but it was different on this one. And I mean, we still managed to have a lot of fun with it.
I was able to catch the first 2 episodes the other night, and I was really impressed with how well you used window light. There's a lot, especially. I mean, I know I've seen you do a couple interviews about Studio 54, and I've yet to get there. I'm headed there. But those first 2 episodes are very naturalistic. Can you talk to me about how you got those very beautiful sort of window light scenarios?
I can to a degree. Halston was an interesting project in that they had started before COVID hit, and were and had actually shot the first episode beforehand. Will Rexer was a DP of the first episode, and Will and I are friends and admire each other's work and feel like we're kind of similar in some ways. And we have mutual friends outside of the business too, which is kind of funny. Will, I'm sure, would tell you that he used a lot of bounces outside of windows for that first episode. And then when I came in for episode 2, and there's some leftover footage from some of those fashion shows that are in there as well, Will had shot those. But in further episodes, 2, 3, 4, 5, we did a lot of bounce lighting, like you noticed, from outside, and let the practicals play on the inside, but tried to keep the light, feeling motivated, like I'm looking around in my apartment right now, just naturally through the windows, certainly LEDs were a big help for the 360 light panels were a big help for that.
Sure.
And then we're more traditionally, when we had bigger sets, which you'll see in one of the Versailles. I think Versailles might be episode 2.
Where the sort of theatrical.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like
so
in a theater show, yeah.
So that and the workspaces there, and the dilapidated house that we found up in New York that to be for Paris, that was all high bounce light coming in, mixed light sources on the inside with work lights mixed with bounce light coming in, and letting characters as Halston walks through that upstairs workspaces, letting him dip in and out of the light a little bit too. And the cameras today also that was with the red Monstro as well. They're so good in low light that you can really, you know, you don't need as much fill at times for certain things. But yeah, I'm a big fan of lighting interiors from the outside, maybe daytime interiors. Yeah.
Do you do any not like compulsively, but I'm sure you have like kind of go-to techniques. Are you when you go for a close, I assume you're lighting for the wide, and then when you hit close-ups, do you modify at all, or are you kind of just really hoping that initial setup
Um,
works? Not
I'm
hoping, but
I am absolutely thrilled when I don't have to modify it. I feel like, the greatest thing is like, wow, this works all the way through. This is so exciting. It's great. But a lot of times, yeah, you have to change the fill to key ratio a little bit, and or soften, a light to not be so harsh on an actor. When you're in a big wide, it can have a little more oomph to it. But then to keep it natural, I'll bring in either more fill or diffuse the light differently, or add a second diffuser to it, or change the light up altogether and do something different to give good close up lighting.
Yeah, going back to the idea of shooting large format now, are you kind of like, I'm not going back to smaller sensors. I'm stuck on large format now.
Well, my first time I did that was on Stranger Things. I think, was that the third season went large format? I think so. Yeah, well, like Athalia's. That's when they came out. Um, um, and you can really play with depth of field more so in the pixel count. And I think the large format is nice to have with 6 and 8K for post VFX, and for um, you know, for, well, like depth of field, which I was just saying, being able to really have strong, focal points um, on a wider lens. It definitely is nice. But I mean, we've all seen so many beautiful movies that aren't large glass, large
Of
format.
course.
And yeah, I don't think it would preclude me from going back. But the hard thing is getting used to the different lenses. Like they're just a 35 is a 35, but it's different in large format.
Yeah. Well, because yeah, the one I think I just said this, but I was watching the episodes with my mom because I was visiting her this weekend. Which those first two episodes, intense to watch with your mom at points. But
Yeah, no, yeah, everybody should understand that this is there. Yeah, it can be a little intense at
a
times.
little luckily we're both adults, but there's one moment where he's being told, we'll give you like 7 mil, and the slow push in that just suddenly like razor thin on his eyes. I was like, this has got to be, not that you can't achieve that with any other camera. Of course, we've seen very narrow depth of field, but
Yeah, those are a couple of things that Dan wanted to do on those. Those were the camera was quite close to you, and he really couldn't see past the camera at that point. So those shots were super, getting inside of his head sort of moments, and used very sparingly, but effectively, I think.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, they were, you know, I mean, I'm even probably lighting up to like a 5.6 or an 8 on those shots. I'm so close to it. I needed to give. I mean, you need to have something in focus. So,
Right.
yeah, my ACs did a great job of that. Yeah,
Were you still using the lights lenses for this show?
Halston was shot on Sigma primes. It had
Oh,
started on
right,
Sigma
right.
primes, and I didn't see a reason to change it. I tested them against other lenses, um, and I think Will had the signature. I'm not sure what they're called. The regular uh, um, Sigmas, and also the Sigma Classics, which tend to kind of flare and go lower contrast in a very unique sort of way, which we wound up using only in Studio 54 to recreate the feeling that maybe we had atmosphere or smoke there, which we were not permitted to do as a COVID protocol on
Right.
this job. It wasn't no one really knew at that point how that would affect the spores, the virus, whatever it's called.
Yeah. How do you what's your opinion of the sigmas against something like a like or lights? It's gonna take me forever to get out of that habit. The Leica lenses, or maybe the master primes or something like that, because they all are pretty neutral lenses, right?
Well, the master primes, I think, are those ones. Those are the super sharp ones. I mean, I look, I don't own lenses. I don't own any equipment because I like to try. I like to think of I like going through the process of looking at lenses for everything the director and I have spoken about, and what feels right. Some are sharper, some are more contrasty, some are flatter. So there's reasons to use different lenses for different shows. The Leicas, we like the Leicas a lot for Stranger Things, and I've used them on other shows. We used, like I said, the Sigmas on this show, and now I'm working with some vintage Panavision lenses on the film I'm shooting now. Um, I do have some favorites out there. I mean, I think the Leicas are always going to be a favorite of mine, but I do love Panavision glass, and
Oh, sure.
it just I'm it's like candy for me.
Yeah. I we're coming up on time here, which sucks because I'm really enjoying this conversation. I kind of wanted to quickly. I forgot to ask when we were talking about
Yeah.
photography, because that was we're enjoying the conversation. But was there any fashion photography influence on the cinematography of the show?
Um, I don't know on Halston if I do, no, I think, well, let me put it this way. For Halston, I looked at, the Ian Schrager book, Studio 54, for a lot of that. And we looked at a lot of, archival photography of Halston, Liza, and his house, the places that we were going to be filming in that he actually were at. We just looked at mostly at the historical photography that captured Halston's life. And and no, I don't think on this one that I really went deep on my photographers. I wanted to capture, um, I wanted to capture this not with a treatment of a look that said it's a period piece. I wanted to let the characters live in full color, like they actually did back in the time, and like everybody did. I mean, we're finally seeing like World War I photography in color or painted, or World War II. We're seeing more of real color
Yeah.
cinematography there, and when you see the stuff restored and it's not steppy and it's all 24 frames. I mean, Peter Jackson just did that wonderful World War I.
Oh, so amazing.
It was so amazing. Um, that we thought growing up that everything was black and white, but you realize that people live with color, if not more color, or the same amount of color that we have right now. So I didn't really want to. I wanted to put them in the real world, which has color in it. And that being said, for Halston, color did evaporate out of his life a little bit towards the end, and we pulled it back a bit in tonality, from his heyday as a designer to his downfall. Um, we dropped out of it a little bit. Talk about having red in a shot. His whole office was red. Um, it works for him for sure. He was quite the personality. Um, but no, I don't know. I think Dan and I just looked at a lot of references that on Halston's life as well. Yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
Um, Before I let you go, I like to ask, and I screwed this up. Sorry to everyone. Screwed it up in the last episode. Didn't ask him. I like to ask everyone the same two questions to end. And so the first one is, what is the one thing that you can point to? And it doesn't have to be the one thing, but just like off the top of your head, one thing that either, whether it be a life decision, life change, or a piece of equipment even, or a resource that you can recall bringing you to the next step in your career.
So what is like a piece of equipment or
Just any, like, some people point, they're like, the day I bought a light meter, my whole life changed. Or we had one guy who was like, he's a one guy. It was Jay Holben. He was saying just even shooting shadow side, like the second he started shooting shadow side, his whole career changed. Or one guy said learning to be kind, like just learning to be kind to everyone and really working together, stuff like that.
I think whoever that one guy is that said learning to be kind or embracing kindness is has it. I think that's really it. I think, the wonderful thing about this business is, and it attracts very like-minded people, is that, we all come together like a circus, and we pop up our tent, and then we perform the circus, and then we take the tent and we disband and we go. Some of us stay with in one tent, but then some of us don't see each other for a while. But I think learning to work alongside people and handle stress and to be kind. I was going to say smiling is a very important part of it, and thank you is a very important part of it. And people are working their asses off to get our visions made, and I think including everybody in that process and making them feel a part of it, because they are a huge part of it. We can't make this film, we can't make these shows without all of us as a collective. I think just sharing that experience with everybody and having everybody feel a part of it is really, besides being great, creating a great on-set morale. It's just, I think I benefit from it greatly. Trying to be, not trying, but just, not freaking out if I don't, sure. If I can avoid it. Yeah. I'm not always the best at it, but I try.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And then the second question is just very simple. Besides Halston, is there any maybe personal projects or anything you'd like to promote at the head here or at the tail?
Oh, I think everybody should watch Halston, and we'll talk about those later on. No, Halston was snuck up on me as something that wound up being something that I'm super proud of, and proud to have worked with all these talented people, and Ryan and Dan, and I think that I like projects that have redemption in them, which is this one I think does. I think Halston found some peace in his life with work with designing for Martha Graham, and also just reflecting back on everything. I'm working right now doing Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which is the children's book, not really children's book, it's a coming of age book. Judy Blume wrote it, and Kelly Freeman Craig is directing, and James Brooks is our main producer. And I just like stories that people can relate to, and that shine a light on sometimes the struggles that might seem like no one else is having them, but yet everybody has their own issues, and it's just redemption. So I'm happy to be a part of that. I'm happy to be part of Halston. I'm happy to be part of all of it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for spending the hour with me. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed that conversation.
Oh, this is really fun. Yeah, no, this is a nice conversation. You were right. Not too. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by ProVideo Coalition. Our theme song is written and performed by Mark Pelly, and the F at Art Mattbox logo was designed by Nate Truax of Truax Branding Company. You can read or watch the podcast you've just heard by going to provideocoalition.com or youtube.com/owlbot, respectively. And as always, thanks for listening.